I just want to say thank you to everybody who asked how they can help support this channel to increase the content. It really means a lot to hear that. But as of right now, I have no plans to start a membership or Patreon or whatever people do. To do that, I would have to quit my job or find a quicker way to make these videos. But I am considering a weekly live show that uses current events to gauge our proximity to the end. Wouldn't take much time either, since it wouldn't have to be edited. Let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in something like that. And if you'd rather see less of me, don't be shy about that either. But that said, I won't be doing this forever. I've come to the conclusion that participating in modern life is in contrast to my own personal goals as a Christian. I've been praying on it, researching it, and speaking with friends on the topic, and it couldn't be clearer what has to be done. The problem is it ironically takes considerable money to separate from Satan's system. There are certain underlying financial factors. Only slaves receive Social Security and Medicare, among other subsidies. And those who leave the shackles won't qualify anymore, which makes living expenses far higher later in life. But I really doubt we have that long anyway. And even if we did, what are the chances those services will still be offered? I estimate 2 to 3 more years of work and frugal living before I can get out. And since I'll be in the world and of it during that time anyway, I'll keep the YouTube channel up. Well, until they shut me down. They've already started deleting videos. Not sure exactly what's going to happen next. Probably start looking for a community of like-minded individuals and hope they'll have me. Not a commune or anything like that. They always fail. Just a nearby town with good folks. And if it doesn't exist, I might just have to set one up. Life is a test, but not the one we've been sold since birth. The goal of life is not he who dies with the most toys wins. It's not about ruthless competition and hoarding of resources. That life isn't even rewarding when you're winning. It's about seeing through the all-encompassing deception and sin that defines the modern world. But most people want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to hedge their bets by pretending to be Christians while enjoying the spoils of Satan's little season. And I get it, they're tempting. But that's because they're supposed to be. These same people are the ones who reject the idea that deception has any impact on our salvation, even though the Bible contradicts that thinking. Ezekiel 14:9 and Hosea 4:6 is what God thinks of those who allow themselves to be deceived. The people want to worship idols, so God lets them have their free will. If we participate in Satan's system today, then we have to deal with the consequences later. That is the reality of the modern world. We are the students. Satan is the proctor, and God has carefully crafted this current world to give us one final test. And you better believe it's a hard one. Just take a look around. There's literally nothing more spiritually obvious. Too many people see ignorance as a form of innocence. But again, the Bible warns us over and over that allowing ourselves to be deceived makes it difficult to find salvation. In Matthew 18:3, Jesus tells us to become like children. And yes, he's talking about innocence to some extent, but also showing that we must clear our minds of all the deception that we've been taught since birth to start our learning over again. Jeremiah 17:9 tells us that it's in our nature to lie to ourselves, so we have to be proactive in filtering out the deception, more now than ever. And when we put our hearts into a wicked world, the result is devastating. The Father knew this, but luckily gave us plenty of warnings. Isaiah 44:20 shows us how the things of this world are deceptive, even when Satan doesn't have complete control. The New Testament follows this tradition. Matthew 24:4 and 5 talks about avoiding false messiahs, which seems easy enough, but in today's secular world, false messiahs are literally anyone or anything that promotes Satan's institutions. I know many of you don't like Paul, but he continues the biblical theme of avoiding the things of this world. Corinthians 6:9 and 10 tells us that culture isn't as innocent as advertised. Don't be deceived by it. This rings true today more than it did in the first century. 1 Corinthians 3:18 and 19 says the wisdom of this world is foolish in God's eyes. I really like this one because it puts things in perspective. We need empathy for the Father just as much as we are supposed to have for our fellow man. Look at the world through the Creator's eyes. He sees our hearts, our souls. The material things of this world couldn't matter less to him. The same applies to false ideologies. We can't waste our energy on them. Ephesians 5:6 tells us this, not to be consumed by worldly arguments. In Matthew 10:16, Jesus tells his followers to be as wise as the serpents, meaning that to live righteously, we have to know our enemies. To understand the deception so that we can avoid it, we have to be fully versed in it. And that education never stops since the enemy's tactics are constantly changing. Mainstream media and the pharmaceutical industry tells us that we need to be happy, and most people think that's the goal of life. Why? Because they want us medicated and deceived. But the reality is that true happiness comes from a relationship with the Father, and the only way to have that is through truth. Ignoring the evils of the world drives us away from Him. Many people have left the conspiracy theory world because it caused them severe depression, and I pray for their souls. Ignorance may be bliss now, but it's death later. Our lives are a test to see if we're able to defy deception, even when it's hard to see, like everything around us today. Why do you think Satan was loosed for this little season? What is God using him for? What has God always used him for? Think about that. His entire identity is deception. It's his fingerprint. And why our place in the biblical timeline is so apparent. If we are truly righteous, we will see through the deception and be in the world but not of it. But if we aren't, then we will indulge ourselves in Satan's spoils, which is currently every one of man's institutions and the products they produce. Nobody said it would be easy, which is why this test is so difficult. Atheists always like to ask why God lets bad things happen to good people. Well, He doesn't. He allows us to have free will. And when we turn a blind eye to the corruption, it continues to oppress the population. That's not God. That's us allowing wickedness to prevail by choice. And it's because we give our blessing and allegiance to man's institutions, which are the most obvious shrines to Satan. Having confidence or approval in any of these institutions is the same as worshiping a golden calf. The most important aspect of the little season is not about arguing over what parts of our history are true or not. It's about how that has created modern life. It's about being able to recognize that for the first time in history, every aspect of our world is riddled with deception and has unconditional control of every major aspect of our daily lives, from government, media, and education to religion, law, and money, in their entirety. How much more proof does anyone need? Those who can't see it are choosing not to see it. They love living in the world evil has provided for them. I see it every day. So many truthers say, yep, it's a little season. Well, business as usual. Or they say the eschatology doesn't matter, just your faith in Christ. Well, yes, to some extent, but this season is the hardest test of faith believers have ever faced, and the vast majority of people claiming to be Christians spend all day expressing their love and worship of this world by eagerly participating in everyday life. The season does matter because we have to be extra diligent, way more so than at any other time in history. Truly understanding the teachings of Christ and applying them to the reality of the world around us is our purpose for being. Why else would the Father create a reality for us that is defined by good versus evil, if not to test us? I no longer believe that we are their descendants. I am certain that we are the rest of the dead, resurrected in waves. The Bible doesn't say that some of the rest of the dead are resurrected during the little season. It infers all of them. And that would be the vast majority of all people who ever lived. Now, it would take a considerable amount of time to resurrect, so to speak, that many people. Based on the qualifications to enter the millennial kingdom in the first resurrection, I'd estimate that well over 99% of the population missed out on that. It only included the Old Testament saints, the church-age believers, and the martyred tribulation believers. The rest of the dead is everyone else who's ever been born and were either too wicked, lost, or simply never heard the word of Christ. This time we're living in today is nothing more than the dead receiving a second chance, no matter how we got here. Answers in Genesis has broken it down across several articles and determined it's really based on the doubling of the birth rate, starting with 2 people, but they found that there could have easily been 4 billion people alive at the time of the flood due to the long lifespans. Easily. Add another billion that died before the flood, and that's 5 billion people born in roughly 1,500 years. And this is being very conservative, as Tom Pickett has calculated that it could have been as high as 40 billion. Then we start repopulating again with 8 people and have another roughly 2,500 years until Jesus. The pre-flood years were full of wickedness, but the post-flood years were defined by war. And war kills a lot of young men before they're old enough to have children. So now we have to assume an even more conservative birth rate, but with an extra 1,000 years, we could easily be looking at another 15 billion lives in that era. So let's say 20 billion people born total, up to and including Christ. But potentially as many as 55 billion. Now, most people who died during tribulation, the goats, are being held in hell waiting for the white throne judgment, so they would not be counted, nor would the sheep, but the widely accepted population is estimated to only be 300 million during Jesus' life, so they wouldn't make a staggering difference in the statistics anyway. This was followed by the millennial kingdom, and it makes sense that some of them would have been wicked, as those who were mortal and born at this time would all have free will. But it's also hard to imagine that it would be anything other than a small number of people considering the environment. The very fact that a small percentage of genetically similar people have controlled the world these past 200 years confirms that for me. That would put us at 20 billion lives lived by the start of the little season, very conservatively. A quick Google search estimates that 15 billion people have lived since 1776. We currently have a world population of 8 billion right now at a rate that doubles every 40 years, which is very high historically. If we get another few billion people in the next 5 years, that could be it for us. Everyone will have been reborn, and it would be time for Satan to march his army on the camp of the saints. That said, you have to assume a ludicrously low birth rate over the first 4,000 years, so we could still have decades or even centuries before we reach the end of the season. The main point is that the rest of the dead is such a massively large number that there's no way that they were all resurrected at once at the beginning of the little season. If that was the case, the population today would literally be in the quadrillions following the same formula. Now look at this population chart from Lambert Dolphin's website. What do you notice? Seems obvious that nearly everyone who lived before is being reborn in this little season. And we're reaching the point of matching it and thus concluding the prophecy. So being the rest of the dead, that means we've lived before, and whether through ignorance or immorality, it wasn't good in the eyes of the Lord. And in my experience, when given a second chance, the standards are always higher than the first time, which is why this test is so difficult. That white throne judgment is going to be a wake-up call for a lot of people. John 5:29 even refers to the rest of the dead at the white throne as the resurrection of judgment. Based on some of the comments from the last video, it appears my message must not have been clear, so I want to talk about deception in general, but also tie it with technology since it's an integral part of our time, and I wanted to add a few more things. This doesn't apply to most of us, but some of the responses to the technology video made it very obvious that people will not give up their idol worship, and the links they will go through to justify it are astonishing. To be fair, I didn't even provide the best biblical passage in that video. It was Ricardo from Contend for the Faith who showed me Ecclesiastes 7:29, which literally confirms that God has a plan for us and we scheme against him through invention. Which makes perfect sense, and I'll say it again, God created this world exactly the way he wanted. Modifying it for our own selfish desires is working against him. Technology is witchcraft, and Satan was guaranteed many generations of obedient followers once he was able to get his devices into our ancestors' hands. They were in our homes since before we were born, and we fail to see the wickedness because we're used to it. We suckled from the teat of invention. We think we have the intuition to differentiate between good and evil. That's just human nature. Technology is comfortable because it's all we've ever known. But intuition is where Christians fail. Proverbs 14:12 says that what seems right to us is the path to death. Deuteronomy 12:8 confirms this. We are deceived, which causes our sense of right and wrong to be screwed up. I studied philosophy a bit in college, and the thing that stood out to me was that even though the concept fails in every moral construct, everyone seems to have their own moral compass. If everyone has a different standard of good and evil, then society collapses as we're witnessing today. This existence has a clear creator who gave us a moral system that works perfectly in the world that he created, but only if everyone agrees. And I have to tell you, every single person I've ever met believes wholeheartedly that they can differentiate right from wrong based strictly on intuition. Proverbs 3:5 wisely tells us that we need to put 100% of our heart into the trust of the Lord and not our own knowledge because our experiences and education are warped. Satan uses our weaknesses against us. Think about tribal people who have never seen a car or a phone. They see it as witchcraft, and they're right. If we saw someone levitating something with a wand, it would appear magical to us. No different than a tribal person seeing a helicopter. Whether magic or invention, they both accomplish the same thing. So why do we see one as wicked and one as innocent? There are two reasons. One, we're used to it. We've had it since birth, so it seems normal. The other reason is addiction. We are addicted to technology. Just look at drug addicts. Most of us are no different. We see all of the technology around us completely differently because our addiction deceives us. It's no different than the junkies or alcoholics that can't see that they're destroying their lives and salvation. That said, we need to stop being deceived into thinking one form of technology is good and others are bad. This is just another divide and conquer strategy the elite are using against us, and we need to be able to recognize it. People condemn AI, then use the internet to do it. It's the same thing. It's an algorithm and some sloppy Photoshop, nothing more. There's literally AI in everything we do online. It's part of every operating system, every bloatware app we download. It manages every piece of text we type as well as most responses. It can't be avoided if we're using silicon. So to condemn it online is quite hypocritical unless we're also condemning computers and phones in the same breath. That's right, everyone watching this is using AI right now. But now we're at a point where if we put AI on a pedestal, or separate it from current technology, then we're helping Satan at his own game. This is why it bothers me when people say it's satanic, not because they don't understand the technology, but because they're helping push a narrative that the elites are trying to use to control and ultimately destroy us. AI is a grift, an illusion to at best keep our false economy afloat and at worst to end humanity. If people stop believing the lies put out about the technology, the handful of AI companies that make up most of the indexes collapse, and take down the stock market with it. The satanic aspect of AI is not that it's more wicked than regular computing, it's that they believe it's something other than it is. This gives it credibility as something other than just another algorithm. Yes, it's witchcraft, but no more so than sending an email. Now, if we want to condemn what the elites want to accomplish with AI, then that's a different story. But as long as people believe the technology today is something more than an algorithm, they win. We're falling right into their trap of deception. We are in a massive economic crisis in which assets are artificially propped up to protect a financial system that enslaves us. They used a fake flu in 2020 as an excuse to print unprecedented amounts of money to devalue all of our savings and keep the illusion alive. They even had to shut down the government a few months ago to prevent even the false financial data from being released. It was that bad. But they can only rig the numbers so much, and now inflation is out of control while the economy is in ruins. And they claim that they only just started QE. It won't be long before we're jealous of Venezuela's wealth gap. Why do you think precious metals have recently doubled in price? At least until the Fed injected $150 billion to help HSBC, JP Morgan, and UBS cover their naked shorts. I'm not sure how much time we have left, but it's going to get so much worse. And now they're using AI. They will come up with something else next when this bubble pops, and it won't be good. That's not to say they don't want real AI or AGI, because it will allow them to replace us. But the technology as it stands is simply the next generation of predictive text and entry-level Photoshop. Besides hiding economic woes, another major reason for the deception is for the implementation of data centers.
So right now, you have AI, ChatGPT, which doesn't really do anything, okay? It makes cool images on your computer and helps you cheat in school, okay? That's about it. Doesn't really do anything else. And if you don't go to school, then you're like, why am I using ChatGPT? Okay? And you're not going to pay a lot of money for it. So AI, it's a dead end. But at the same time, all around the world, everyone's spending billions, trillions of dollars on data centers, right? So everyone's putting money into AI. But then you're like, well, how can you make money off that? If you think the answer is for you to use AI, well, it's hard to make money off that. But if the answer is to create an AI surveillance state, that makes a lot more sense, right? So what is a surveillance state? Very easy, guys. We have it in China, okay? It's digital ID and digital currency. And the idea is that everything you buy, everything you do will be tracked. And so they can create a profile on you. This profile will tell the government who you are, how you behave, what you think. Not only that, the government can also manipulate how you think, how you behave. Okay?
In addition, look at ChatGPT's biggest competitor, DeepSeek. It's more accurate and can run locally on your phone. This is very important. AI doesn't even require data centers. And when we see the links they're willing to go through, from destroying the electric grid and water tables of every state, we should be scared. The AI RAM shortage is also fabricated to eventually get us onto 100% cloud computing. When you think about it, it doesn't even make sense. They've been building these data centers for years, and now all of a sudden, when the infrastructure is nearing completion, they suddenly require all the RAM? They simply don't want us to have the processing power to function off-grid. They want to control all information and store massive databases on each of us at their data centers. AI layoffs aren't even real. There are no positions that have been replaced with AI. It was an excuse to cut costs in a failing economy and at the same time push the narrative that AI is actual viable technology, capable of job replacement.
We need to explain what's happening, and part of that is debunking some myths around this. Now, I remember about a month ago, there was a whole wave of very scary headlines, including in a publication I really liked, the New York Post. Nick, maybe you can put this on the screen, claiming that AI was wreaking havoc on U.S. jobs. So this was a headline from the New York Post last month based on the October report from Challenger Gray, which basically tabulates announced layoffs in the economy. And we had a spike in October, and about 20% of those were attributed to AI. It wasn't even the majority. It was actually a relatively small number. It wasn't even the number one reason. But based on this, you got a wave of scare headlines that AI was wreaking havoc on U.S. jobs. Well, lo and behold, the November Challenger Gray report has come out, and it makes clear that October was an anomalous spike. The number fell by 53%, and only about 6,000 of the layoffs that were announced in November in the entire country were attributable to AI. This is only layoff, by the way. It doesn't include job creations, okay? So only 6,000. And if you look at the year to date in the Challenger Gray report, AI has only accounted for 4.7% of total layoffs. And that number is self-reported by CEOs, so my guess is it's inflated, because if you're a CEO, you'd rather blame AI for your company's non-performance rather than yourself. So that's, I think, a really important fact is regardless of what you want to claim will happen in the future, job loss has not happened yet.
By believing these lies, we are helping push a narrative that will take us to the next level of enslavement. So AI doesn't exist yet. What we're witnessing is just the next age of software development. People like to say that the internet has allowed them to find Christ, and they wouldn't even know about the little season if not for it. I empathize with that, but respectfully disagree. Without the absolute onslaught of technology we deal with on a daily basis, we would have more time for family and Bible study. I can't remember exactly who, it was either Madeline or JT, but they said in an interview a while back that their father was aware of all this stuff back in the 70s. The internet didn't help him discover the little season. Honest Bible study and a realistic view of the world did. Others have come forward in the comments and claimed the same. They knew this well before most of us were born. There's no reason we can't do the same. We need to just admit everything today is a deception created by Satan. Modern life is a sin and in stark contrast to the Father's goals, not try to find ways to justify it. And as we are the ones awake to the reality of the world, we have a responsibility to spread the message, even at the risk of rejection. God bless everyone.